Prince Harry's legal war with the British press has entered a far more dangerous stage. And this time, the risk is not only reputational, it may be financial. After a devastating defeat in his case against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Daily Mail, attention has now turned to legal costs, and the figures being discussed are extraordinary. According to reporting and commentary around the case, Associated Newspapers is expected to push aggressively to recover as much of its legal bill as possible. If the court agrees, Harry and the other claimants could face costs on a scale that would change the entire Sussex financial picture. The basic facts are brutal. Harry and 6 other claimants brought a privacy case against the publisher of the Daily Mail. The judge, Mr. Justice Nicklin, rejected all 97 claims. That alone was a severe blow. This was not a narrow defeat where part of the case survived or where the court accepted some arguments while dismissing others. The result, as described in the original discussion, was a complete collapse across the board. The judge found against the claimants on every count, and the Mail immediately declared itself vindicated. Now comes the expensive part. A 2-day costs hearing is scheduled to begin on July 29.
Yikes! The Daily Mail want $75 million and could well bankrupt Prince Harry following his disastrous legal action against the newspaper, which saw all 97 claims thrown out by the furious judge, Mr. Justice Nicklin. Now, this was a court case that should not have happened and did not need to happen. And as a result of this latest brutal move by the publishers of the Daily Mail, it could leave Harry penniless and facing ruin. Be clear, folks, the Daily Mail are angry and they are waging war on the Duke. Now, the Mail, led by their fearless and heroic boss, Paul Dacre, are pushing the judge to remove so-called spending caps so that Harry can effectively face an unlimited legal bill.
And that hearing could determine how much Harry and the other claimants may have to pay. Associated Newspapers is expected to seek what is known as an indemnity costs order. In simple terms, that could allow the publisher to recover a much larger share of its legal costs than usual. Paul Dacre, the powerful figure associated with the Mail Group, has reportedly said the combined legal costs for both sides are in excess of $75 million. That does not automatically mean Harry personally pays that full amount, but it explains why the stakes are so high. The Mail's position, according to sources cited in the commentary, is that it intends to pursue costs with maximum force. The company believes it was dragged through an unnecessary, weak, and damaging legal battle. Its journalists and executives feel their reputations were attacked, their work was maligned, and their livelihoods placed under pressure by claims that ultimately failed in court. In that context, the publisher may not be inclined toward compromise. If it can persuade the judge that the case was conducted in a way that justifies higher costs, Harry could face a bill far beyond what he may have expected. This is where the phrase indemnity costs becomes so important. Ordinary legal costs are already painful, but an indemnity order is a more severe outcome.
Given the very flimsy nature of the evidence provided by Harry, all of which collapsed under scrutiny, not only could he and his fellow claimants, including Sir Elton John, be liable for tens of millions of dollars, but his insurers could walk away too, further adding to Harry's financial pain. Now, in principle, the insurers were going to cover a small amount of any liabilities, because when you take a legal action like this, you can employ insurers, you can pay them for some protection, but it's never going to be for the full amount. But it's now looking increasingly likely that they will offer Harry no support whatsoever, and I've got the inside story which will shock you.
It can be made when the court believes the conduct of a party, the nature of a case, or the way the litigation unfolded justifies a stronger costs award. Former High Court Judge Colin Campbell reportedly told The Times that Harry's complete defeat makes such an order more likely. The reasoning is clear. If the claimants lost on every allegation, there may be little realistic argument for significantly reducing the publisher's recoverable costs. That would be difficult enough on its own. but Harry's public reaction after the judgment may have made matters worse. After the ruling, Harry joined a statement describing the result as a complete and obvious whitewash, and saying the exoneration of the male was shocking and unwarranted. That kind of language might satisfy the emotions of someone who feels wronged, but it is risky when the same judge still has discretion over costs. If you need the court's mercy on the financial consequences of a case, attacking the integrity of the court is not the obvious strategic move. This is the mistake legal commentators immediately identified. A disappointed claimant can say they are upset, that they respect the court but disagree, or that they are considering next steps. That is normal. What is not normal is implying that the judge participated in or enabled a whitewash. The criticism was seen by many as an attack, not just on the outcome.
Meanwhile, there's been a furious political reaction to Harry's angry statement after the verdict when he described what happened as shocking, unwarranted, and an obvious whitewash. You heard me right, folks. He responds to losing that court case in the highest court in the land, the Royal Courts of Justice. Harry, in a characteristically unhinged and mad rant, says,
yeah, the verdict, it was shocking, unwarranted, and obviously a whitewash, yeah?
Now, that is outrageous. That is an obnoxious thing to say. It's my understanding that King Charles is deeply unhappy about Harry's remarks because as head of state, King Charles is the figurehead of the Royal Courts of Justice.
But on Mr. Justice Nicklin's neutrality, professionalism, and integrity. That matters because judges operate within a constitutional system, and in the United Kingdom they do so in the name of the Crown. For Harry, that constitutional dimension is uniquely awkward. He is not merely a celebrity litigant. He is the son of King Charles. The Royal Courts of Justice are not an abstract institution to him. They are part of the legal order over which his father, as sovereign, symbolically presides. So when Harry uses language that appears to question the legitimacy of a High Court judgment, he creates embarrassment not only for himself, but for the monarchy. According to the commentary, King Charles is understood to be deeply unhappy about the remarks, and that would hardly be surprising. The political reaction has also been severe. Alex Chalk, a former Justice Secretary, said expressing disagreement with a judgment is perfectly reasonable, but that Harry's attack on a High Court judge was over the top, personal, and unacceptable. Chalk emphasized that judges act in the name of the king and swear allegiance to the sovereign, something Harry should understand better than most. However disappointed Harry may have been, Chalk argued that insulting one of His Majesty's judges crossed a line. Sir Robert Buckland, another former Justice Secretary and King's Counsel, also criticised the tone and content of Harry's attack.
Therefore, Harry's remarks are highly embarrassing. The verdict was handed down, and Harry says it was shocking, unwarranted, and an obvious whitewash. What an insult, and there's every chance that the judge involved, Mr. Justice Nicklin, will be furious too. And I've been told by legal experts, Justice Nicklin could well side with the Daily Mail following Harry's angry and insulting outburst about his verdict, which brought into question Mr. Justice Nicklin's professionalism, neutrality, and integrity. So it's not a good idea to attack the verdict of a judge whose help you need when you are on the hook for millions and millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the prince is losing all his friends.
He argued that at a time when judges face increasing threats to their security, major public figures and members of the royal family should exercise restraint. That point cuts directly against Harry's own public narrative. Harry frequently emphasizes his safety concerns, yet critics argue that his words may have contributed to a hostile atmosphere around the judiciary. When someone with Harry's platform attacks a judge in emotionally loaded terms, the consequences can extend beyond his personal disappointment. Lord Garnier KC, a former Solicitor General, added a more reflective critique. He noted that the judge had spent the trial immersed in evidence, analysis, uncontested facts, findings and legal reasoning across hundreds of pages. The claimants may dislike the final ruling, but Garnier's point was that the court had engaged seriously with the material. He also warned that the claimants had embarked on a hugely risky venture that did not succeed. Perhaps most importantly, he suggested that long legal crusades are not always the path to peace. Sometimes ignoring the hurt brings more lasting relief than years of litigation. That line goes to the heart of Harry's problem. His legal battles are not only about newspaper articles. They are about grief, memory, anger, and the unresolved trauma of Princess Diana's death. Harry appears to want someone in the press world to stand up and admit that they deliberately wronged him, that they caused his pain, that they took his mother, that they owe him the closure he has never been able to find. But even if one understands where that desire comes from, the legal system cannot give him emotional resurrection. A judgment cannot bring Diana back. A courtroom cannot repair childhood trauma. And a failed case can leave him with neither vindication nor peace. Marina Hyde, the Guardian columnist and co-host of The Rest is Entertainment, captured the mood among many media observers. The Guardian has historically been more sympathetic to Harry and Meghan than some right-leaning outlets, which makes her criticism more striking. Hyde and Richard Osman discussed the case as a self-destructive legal disaster, pointing out that the claimants failed to produce convincing evidence on any of the 97 counts. They questioned the preparation of the case and noted how damaging it was for Harry to attack the judge afterward, particularly when enormous costs were still to be decided. Hyde also raised the insurance issue, which could become central. The claimants reportedly had, after the event, insurance through Temple Legal, intended to cover some costs if they lost.
Prince Harry and 6 other claimants. Attention now turns to legal costs with a 2-day hearing beginning on the 29th of July. And it could be an extraordinarily expensive couple of days for Harry. Now, it was Harry and 6 others who brought the case against the Daily Mail. Because they lost, they have to pick up the bill. The million-dollar question is, how big will that bill be? And could the costs be unlimited? So Associated Newspapers is expected to seek something called an indemnity costs order. You heard me right, indemnity costs order, which could significantly increase the amount recoverable from Prince Harry. So Paul Dacre, who of course runs the whole media enterprise, he's the former editor of the Daily Mail and now the head of Associated Newspapers.
The insurance has been described as covering approximately $19 million of potential costs. But if the overall figure being discussed by Associated Newspapers is around $75 million, that insurance would cover only a fraction, even in the best case scenario. Worse for Harry, commentators have suggested that insurers could dispute or reduce cover if the court makes a punitive costs award or if policy conditions have been breached. Insurance in litigation is not a magical shield. It depends on the wording of the policy, the conduct of the case, and the circumstances of the loss. Former Judge Colin Campbell reportedly noted that insurers monitor cases closely and may withdraw cover depending on policy terms if conditions are not met. If Harry's statement after the judgment is seen as inflammatory, or if the court's criticism of the claimant's case influences the costs decision, insurers could have reason to examine their exposure carefully. That does not mean cover will definitely disappear, but it means Harry cannot assume the policy will protect him from every consequence. The numbers being discussed are sobering. The Mail had previously told the court it had already incurred around $10 million in costs and expected to spend millions more. Paul Dacre's broader figure of more than $75 million covers the total legal costs for both sides. The insurance figure mentioned is around $19 million.
He says that the total legal costs for both sides are in excess of $75 million. Now, a source close to the Daily Mail said the company fully intends to go for the jugular in recovering as much of its costs as possible. This ties in with what we discussed the other day when I said that the Daily Mail are going to wage war on Harry because they're extremely angry that this happened. They're bitter. They feel aggrieved, and some of their fantastic, talented journalists have had so much stress, so much anxiety, worrying about their livelihoods and about their careers and, of course, their reputations. Because in journalism, if you don't have your reputation, you have nothing. So a source at the Daily Mail says
Colin Campbell reportedly expected Mr Justice Nicklin to order an interim payment on account of costs, possibly around $13 million, payable within 14 days of a decision. If such an order is made and costs cannot be paid, enforcement options could theoretically include bankruptcy proceedings, charging orders over property, and other insolvency measures. That is why the word bankruptcy has entered the conversation. No one should claim Harry is bankrupt now. That is not the point. The point is that a large adverse costs order could create serious financial pressure, especially if insurance does not cover the full amount and if wealthy co-claimants or allies do not step in to shield him. Legal costs at this level are not symbolic. They can swallow assets, force settlements, or create pressure on property and cash reserves. The role of Sir Elton John is therefore being watched closely. Elton was among the claimants and is one of the richest musicians in the world, with an estimated fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Sources have suggested that Harry and Elton may have agreed to protect less wealthy claimants financially if necessary, including figures such as Doreen Lawrence and Sadie Frost. According to Paula Froelic's reporting, discussed in the source, Elton may be willing to help those less wealthy claimants, but not necessarily to write a blank check for Harry. If that is accurate, Harry could find himself exposed in a way he may not have anticipated. Doreen Lawrence's involvement is especially sensitive. Baroness Lawrence is widely respected because of her long campaign for justice after the racist murder of her son, Stephen Lawrence. Critics now argue that she may have been drawn into a risky legal fight that did not serve her interests. Reports cited in the discussion said Harry is protective of her and that nobody, least of all the Duke, wants to see her left out of pocket. But protecting someone in a press briefing is one thing. Ensuring they are financially safe after a failed case is another. The public will watch whether the people who encourage this litigation accept responsibility for its consequences. Harry's defenders would argue that he acted from principle and that he genuinely believes the press has behaved unlawfully and destructively. They would say he has the right to sue if he believes his privacy was violated. They would also point out that British tabloid history includes real misconduct, and that not every criticism of the press should be dismissed simply because this particular case failed. Those points matter. The press has made serious mistakes in the past, and public figures do not give up all rights because they are famous. But this case now stands as a warning about suspicion versus evidence. According to the judgment discussed in the transcript, Mr. Justice Nicklin criticised Harry for relying on suspicion rather than proof, and for placing excessive reliance on Gavin Burrows, who later withdrew key allegations.
The Times that Harry's complete defeat makes an indemnity order more likely, in other words, unlimited legal costs. Campbell said there's no realistic argument for reducing costs because Mr. Justice Nicklin, the big judge, found against the claimants, including Harry, on every single count. The claimants are believed to have, after the event, insurance arranged through a business called Temple Legal. It's called after the event insurance. The idea is when you sue someone, you've got this insurance, and therefore they will pay out a bit if you lose. Now, the insurance is understood to cover approximately $19 million of potential costs. Now, remember, Paul Dacre is looking for...
That is a central legal problem. Feeling certain that something happened is not enough. Believing that a newspaper must have behaved badly because other newspapers have behaved badly is not enough. A court needs evidence tied to specific claims. Without that, emotion collapses under scrutiny. That collapse is reputationally devastating for Harry because he built so much of his public identity around moral certainty. He has repeatedly suggested that he is fighting not only for himself, but for accountability, truth, and a better media culture. When a court rejects every claim, critics feel empowered to say the crusade was not truth-seeking, but grievance-driven. Even media figures who might usually be sympathetic to his anti-tabloid rhetoric have begun to ask whether he has become self-destructive. The impact on the Mail is almost the opposite of what Harry intended. Camilla Long of the Sunday Times observed that page after page of the judgment praised individual Mail journalists as impressive, honest, and candid, while Paul Dacre was described in favourable terms. For Harry, who has long treated the Mail as one of his arch-enemies, that must have been a bitter outcome. He risked millions only to see a judge reject his case and, in the process, enhance the credibility of some of the very journalists he hoped to discredit. That point matters for press freedom. Long argued that beneath the jokes at Harry's expense lies a more serious issue. How healthy is it for society if a prince can drag scores of journalists through the courts because he dislikes or distrusts a newspaper? Some people may dislike the Daily Mail. Some may believe parts of the British press deserve scrutiny. But freedom of speech cannot be discarded because powerful people dislike critical coverage. If one paper, one trade, or one group of journalists can be smeared broadly as corrupt without evidence for each specific claim, the principle becomes dangerous. Long also described an incident during the trial in which she said Harry's PR representative approached her to complain that Harry did not like the tone of one of her pieces. Her concern was not merely that a prince disliked criticism, it was the implied attempt to police acceptable commentary around a live case. In her view, if a journalist covering the trial could be approached that way, more vulnerable people might feel even more pressure. Again, this is her account and should be treated as such, but it fits a broader criticism. Harry wants to be protected from the power of the press while also exerting pressure on the press when coverage displeases him. That contradiction has followed Harry for years. He says he wants privacy, but he tells intimate stories in books and documentaries. He says he wants healing, but he keeps reopening wounds. He says he wants accountability, but he often appears resistant to accountability for his own choices. He criticizes media intrusion, but his projects depend on media attention.
Over costs. Now, there are concerns that the insurers could dispute or reduce cover if the court makes a punitive costs award based on the judge's criticisms. Mr. Justice Nicklin's 436-page judgment criticised Harry for relying on suspicion rather than evidence and for placing excessive reliance on the aforementioned Gavin Burrows, who later withdrew his key allegations. So it could be argued that Harry's case was so weak, with all 97 allegations against the Daily Mail thrown out, the insurers may be within their rights to say, sorry, Harry, you're not getting a penny for us. Now, this former High Court judge, Colin Campbell, said insurers monitor cases closely and, depending on the policy wording, could withdraw cover if policy conditions are breached. And
he attacks institutions but wants institutional protection. He wants to live in California as a private citizen, but still expects deference to royal status. The financial context makes all of this more serious. Harry and Meghan live in an extremely expensive world. Their Montecito home is reported to carry a large mortgage, with figures discussed around $8 million and annual mortgage payments said to be close to $500,000. Staffing costs have been estimated in the hundreds of thousands. Their private security has been reported at several $1 million a year. Harry has already faced legal costs in previous actions. On top of that, they have the everyday costs of maintaining a celebrity household, travel, public relations, and the broader Sussex operation. Harry has had substantial money he inherited from Princess Diana and reportedly from the Queen Mother. Spare brought a major book advance, often discussed at more than $20 million. The early media deals with Netflix and Spotify created the impression that the Sussexes would have a long runway of income. But those resources are not infinite. A mortgage, security, staff, lifestyle spending, legal costs, taxes, and business expenses can drain even large sums quickly. If a new costs order lands heavily, the financial cushion becomes much thinner. Meghan's spending and lifestyle ambitions are often drawn into this discussion, sometimes harshly. Critics argue that Harry might personally be content with a simpler life, perhaps somewhere rural and less image-driven, while Meghan prefers the expensive world of celebrity status, high-end homes, elite neighbours, and lifestyle comparison with figures such as Oprah Winfrey and Gwyneth Paltrow. Whether that is fully fair or not, it reflects a public perception that the Sussexes have locked themselves into a lifestyle requiring constant revenue. They cannot easily downsize without headlines. They cannot stop working without financial pressure. And yet, the kinds of deals that once looked easy may be harder to secure now. This is where Harry's legal choices become even more puzzling. If money is tight, or at least under pressure, why pursue risky litigation on such a scale? Why keep fighting cases based on old articles and difficult evidence? Why attack a judge after losing when that same judge still controls costs? The answer may be that this is not primarily rational, it is emotional. Harry's battle with the press is tied to his deepest wound. But the adult world does not suspend consequences because a wound is real. Pain can explain behavior without making it wise.
Unlimited legal costs, and these spending caps are lifted, which is the choice and discretion of Mr. Justice Nicklin, then Harry could go broke. Now, this judge, Campbell, expects Mr. Justice Nicklin to order an interim payment, right? Just a down payment on account of around $13 million, payable within 14 days of his decision. So that means that by mid-August, when the Mark Dolan Show is in America, by the way, because we're going on a US road trip, by mid-August, Harry has already got to contribute to that fee of $13 million. If costs cannot be paid, enforcement options include bankruptcy proceedings, charging orders over property, and other insolvency measures. Now, of course, Elton can handle it because he's one of the richest musicians on planet Earth. He has an
The public has begun to see that distinction. Many people can feel sympathy for the boy who lost his mother and still question the man who keeps suing newspapers decades later. They can understand his anger and still believe he should stop litigating. They can accept that the press has behaved badly in the past and still accept that this case failed for lack of evidence. They can wish him peace and still say he needs to pay his own bills. That last point is becoming especially powerful in Britain. Marina Hyde previously wrote that Harry is not a victim in the security dispute, but a rich man who can pay for his own protection. That line resonated because it stripped away the emotional framing. Harry chose to leave working royal life. He chose to live in California. He chose commercial independence. He chose to maintain a high-cost lifestyle. He can ask for protection where there is a specific threat, but the idea that taxpayers should underwrite his preferred arrangements is a hard sell, especially when his public actions repeatedly attack British institutions. The court case now makes the same argument in legal form. If Harry chooses to sue and loses, he may have to pay. If he attacks the judge, it may affect the atmosphere around costs. If insurers question cover, that is a consequence of the risk he took. If Elton John does not rescue him, that is not injustice, it is adulthood. The world Harry left behind often cushioned him from consequences. The world he chose does not always do that. King Charles is caught in the background of all of this. As a father, he may worry about his son's emotional and financial state. As king, he cannot endorse attacks on the judiciary. Harry's statement after the ruling may have caused private frustration because it places the monarch in an impossible position. Charles cannot publicly rebuke his son without creating more drama, but silence can be read as tolerance. He cannot rescue Harry financially without reviving accusations that the Sussexes remain dependent on royal money, but allowing Harry to suffer the consequences may deepen the family rupture. Prince William's likely view is easier to imagine. William has spent years watching Harry turn family grievance into public material. He has seen the monarchy, Catherine, Charles, Camilla, and the institution repeatedly attacked or embarrassed. Now he sees Harry attack the court system and potentially drag the family name into another constitutional awkwardness. For William, this will only reinforce the need for distance. The future king cannot build trust with someone who may transform every setback into a public accusation. The wider establishment is also shifting. Criticism of Harry is no longer confined to tabloid commentators or royal YouTube channels.
Are absolutely in the toilet, dans la toilette, as the French say. This is the in die Toilette, as the Germans say, auf die Treppe schnell. So Harry has, we understand, an $8 million mortgage on his Montecito home, which they can't afford. But Meghan is so obsessed with her public image, and she's got to compete with Oprah Winfrey and Gwyneth Paltrow. So they've got the big house that they can't afford. It's like the place in Portugal. That's $9 million. It's money they haven't got. Meghan is a total spendthrift. And it's very ironic because Harry would be more than happy just on a farm in South Africa, raising cattle and drinking beer and hunting and shooting and eating wild game on the barbecue. But Meghan's got expensive taste. So $8 million mortgage on the Montecito home. The annual mortgage payments of $469,000 reportedly.
It is coming from former Justice Secretaries, King's Counsel, The Times, The Sunday Times, Guardian columnists, and mainstream legal observers. That is a major change. When people across the political and media spectrum begin saying the same thing, Harry's room for dismissing criticism as tabloid hostility shrinks. The concern is no longer only that Harry is difficult or dramatic, it is that he is becoming constitutionally and financially reckless. That recklessness may also affect his remaining formal status. In related commentary around this period, The Times argued that Harry's role as a Counsellor of State should be removed entirely through legislation, if necessary. He is already unable to perform the role in practice because he is not a working royal and lives abroad. But the symbolic question remains. Should someone who publicly attacks British courts, sues the government over security, and lives as a private American-based celebrity retain a constitutional title linked to acting on behalf of the sovereign? For many, the answer is increasingly no. The late Queen Elizabeth II understood the danger of ambiguity when she rejected the half-in, half-out arrangement. Harry and Meghan could leave, but they could not pick and choose which pieces of royal life to keep. That principle looks wiser with every new controversy. Harry's life outside the monarchy is his choice.
Staffing costs of $250,000, a previous legal bill of $2 million when Harry previously sued the Daily Mail and then changed his mind and had to pay his costs and theirs. And then there is the cost of annual security, reportedly $4 million. So do you see the problem? Now, Harry's got some savings. He inherited $13 million from Princess Diana and a further $10 million from the late Queen Mother when he turned 40. Plus, of course, $20 million or more for the book Spare. But the issue you've got, that money is dwindling. And now, if he's liable for up to $75 million and Elton John is not going to write a check for that whole lump sum, then Harry...
But if he wants to be a private citizen with the freedom to attack institutions, then he must give up the remaining symbols of institutional authority. Britain can feel sympathy for him without leaving constitutional loose ends. The legal costs hearing on July 29 therefore becomes more than a financial date. It is a moment of accountability. The court will consider what costs should be paid, whether an indemnity order is appropriate, and how the aftermath of the failed case should be handled. Harry's side may argue for limitation, fairness, proportionality, and reliance on insurance. The Mail will likely argue that it was forced to defend itself against claims that failed completely and that it deserves serious recovery. The judge will decide within the framework of law, not emotion. There are several possible outcomes, and none of them are especially comfortable for Harry. The first is that the court orders a substantial but contained costs payment, with insurance covering enough to prevent the situation from becoming catastrophic. That would still be embarrassing and expensive, but survivable. The second is that the court makes a more severe order, leaving Harry and the other claimants exposed to a much larger bill than expected. That would create immediate pressure and could force private negotiations, emergency funding, or asset decisions.
Podcast. It's a massive show. It's actually one of the biggest shows in the world. And it's called The Rest is Entertainment. She co-hosts it with another genius called Richard Osman. who is a top TV producer, best-selling author, and TV host. And Marina's a brilliant writer. So you've got Marina Hyde and you've got Richard Osman. And here they are on their hit show, The Rest is Entertainment, taking Harry down and taking him down to Chinatown.
The fact is, they just failed to produce convincing evidence on any of 97 counts. Now that is a genuine horror show.
Was that 97 sort of individual stories that they were saying that they had?
These have derived from...
They could argue what had been derived from that, and they had evidence to back that up in court.
But they didn't, and they did not have a case. And the indictment...
The third is that the insurance question becomes contested, which would turn one legal defeat into a second battle over who must actually pay. In that scenario, Harry's problem would not end with the ruling. It would continue through arguments with insurers, co-claimants, and possibly wealthy friends who may not want to be dragged deeper into his personal war. The most damaging part is uncertainty. Wealthy people can often manage large bills if they know exactly what they owe and when. Uncertainty is different. It freezes decisions. It affects mortgages, business plans, security budgets, brand launches, staff arrangements, and negotiations with future partners. If Harry and Meghan are trying to pitch projects, rebuild commercial momentum, or keep up the image of California stability, a looming legal bill becomes a shadow over everything. Companies do not like uncertainty. Investors do not like it. Media partners do not like it. Even friends become cautious when a dispute appears to have no bottom. This may also affect Meghan's calculations. She has been trying to build herself as a lifestyle figure, a duchess in the American marketplace, a woman of taste, elegance, domestic aspiration, and carefully managed status. That image depends on calm. It depends on abundance. It depends on the sense that the Sussexes are not scrambling. A major legal bill cuts against all of that. It makes the brand look pressured. It invites questions about the mansion, the security costs, the future of Netflix, the value of the title, and whether the couple can continue living at the level they project. For Harry, the psychological blow may be even worse. He did not simply lose a case. He lost a case that was tied to his deepest public mission. His battle against the press was supposed to be righteous. It was supposed to show that he had evidence, courage, and moral clarity. Instead, critics now say it revealed poor judgment, weak preparation, and a refusal to separate suspicion from proof. That is not a small reputational bruise. It challenges the foundation of the public crusader identity he has tried to build since leaving royal life. The reaction from figures like Marina Hyde is therefore especially important. When criticism comes only from newspapers Harry already hates, he can dismiss it as predictable hostility. But when a Guardian columnist, entertainment commentators, former justice secretaries, and establishment newspapers all converge on the same concern, the argument becomes harder to wave away. It suggests that Harry is losing the middle ground. He may still have loyal supporters, and he may still believe he is fighting a noble fight, but the wider conversation is moving from sympathy to exhaustion.
Your conduct after a trial matters. This is why when people come down the steps of a courtroom and they say things like, we're incredibly disappointed in the verdict, this is fine. These are emotions. You can have feelings about this or that. Instead, they attack the judges. There's a statement which attacked the judge's integrity. They sort of suggested that he was party pre, effectively, crooked, and that they hadn't been given justice.
You cannot question the integrity of a judge. You cannot imply that he's crooked or that he's not neutral. And don't attack the judicial process within the Royal Courts of Justice, because they are the Royal Courts of Justice. Clues in the name, royal. They are represented by your own father, King Charles. So it's incredibly foolish of you, Harry. And oh boy, are you...
That exhaustion is dangerous because it changes how every future Harry story is received. A new lawsuit will be seen through the lens of this defeat. A new security complaint will be judged against the cost of his choices. A new interview about trauma will be measured against the question of whether he is willing to change. A new attack on the press will be met with the response, where is the evidence? Once a public figure loses the benefit of the doubt, even sincere statements land differently. If Harry faces a large bill, the Sussex strategy may have to change quickly. They may need new income, they may need to reduce spending, they may need to rethink future lawsuits, they may need to stop assuming that grievance can be monetized indefinitely. They may also need to confront a more difficult truth. The public appetite for their battles is not what it once was. The more Harry loses, the less heroic his crusade appears. The more he complains, the less sympathy he receives. The more expensive the consequences become, the more people ask why he keeps doing this to himself. There is still a path out, but it would require discipline. Harry has not often shown. He could accept the court's judgment, stop attacking the judiciary, pay or settle what he must, and step away from litigation as a central part of his identity. He could focus on Invictus, Well-Child, veterans, and causes where he still has credibility. He could rebuild quietly with his father without turning every meeting into a media story. He could accept that William may not come back into his life soon, if ever. He could stop trying to make the press provide emotional closure for a tragedy it cannot undo. That would be a healthier future. But it would require Harry to surrender the idea that every defeat is proof of corruption and every critic is part of a hostile machine. It would require him to accept that judges can find against him honestly, journalists can criticize him lawfully, and institutions can deny him special treatment without being malicious. It would require him to move from grievance to responsibility. That is the step he has resisted most. The current crisis is so damaging because it combines every weakness in the Sussex project. There is the emotional impulsiveness of the post-verdict statement. There is the legal risk of enormous costs. There is the financial strain of a high-cost lifestyle. There is the constitutional awkwardness of the King's son attacking a royal court. There is the media backlash from outlets that once seemed more sympathetic. There is the possibility that insurers may not fully protect him, and there is the question of whether wealthy allies will continue to absorb the fallout. In the end, Harry may discover that suing the press did the opposite of what he intended. Instead of humiliating the Mail, he may have strengthened it. Instead of proving his case, he exposed how thin the evidence was. Instead of looking brave, he may look reckless. Instead of gaining closure, he may gain a massive bill. And instead of separating himself from royal drama, he has pulled his father, the courts, the media, and the monarchy into another round of embarrassment. That is why this moment feels so serious. This is not another passing headline about a missed event or a family disagreement. It is a collision between Harry's emotional crusade and the hard machinery of law. In that machinery, feelings do not pay costs. Titles do not prove evidence. Anger does not overturn judgments. And attacks on judges do not usually make the next hearing easier. For now, the question is simple and severe. How much will Harry have to pay, and who will pay it with him? If the bill is manageable and insurance responds, he may escape the worst financial outcome, though the reputational damage will remain. If the costs are far higher and insurance becomes contested, the consequences could be profound. Either way, the lesson is already visible. Prince Harry wanted accountability from the press. Instead, he may be facing accountability of his own.
We called it. The insurance is not guaranteed.
And in terms of who will pay,
Yeah.
and
how much?
it will be Elton John and Prince Harry because they've got the money.
Correction. Elton's got the money. Harry has not. Can you feel the love tonight?
Harry will never get the closure that he wants. He wants someone to stand up there and said, we wronged you, we did it deliberately, this is what we did. And you can see, you know why, you know where he's come from. That will never go away for him, but I don't think he's ever going to get that closure, right?
No, he's never going to get that closure. And it's too crass to do the sort of pop psychology, but yeah, it's never going to bring her back. It's really awful.
And that's why The Rest is Entertainment is such a good show, because these two are highly entertaining, but they're great journalists as well. and they drop so many truth bombs, and they see through so much BS. And actually, Marina Hyde is a very interesting person.